Hello, beautiful beings, and welcome to the episode of today. So this podcast episode is all about loneliness. I want to talk about loneliness as far as what is actually going on in the brain with loneliness, what exactly is loneliness versus being alone or solitude or wanting just your own space, because I think a lot of people think, well, I spend a lot of time on my own. I enjoy being alone. I'm a bit of an introvert, but I feel fine, because I'm going to talk about kind of the health implications of loneliness. But I do want to differentiate massively someone that genuinely likes being alone a lot versus someone who feels isolated and has a lack of connection. Okay. So there is a difference there. So if you are an introvert with one friend, but you really feel great and happy, then these health implications do not apply to you. So it's not like you need to be social and around hundreds of people in order to be healthy. But we're talking about the health implications of loneliness. We're talking about what exactly is going on in the brain with loneliness. And then I'm going to be talking about things that if you are feeling really lonely, things that you can start to do that is like really actionable take-home steps that you can do that will start to turn that loneliness around. And more so than just the obvious, like call a friend, like more than that, okay? So wait till the end of the episode and I'm going to be giving you some actionable steps to start to turn that feeling of loneliness around. Okay, now, life update. I feel like, so currently, I'm fucking pregnant and I'm banking a lot of episodes as much as possible because, you know, yes, I'm going to go on maternity, quote unquote, I call it maternity leave. I'm going to have 3 weeks of like, you know, rerun or highlight or encore episodes, but I also need to bank all these episodes so I can take a significant couple of months off without worrying that the podcast is suffering, right? So I've been putting in the fucking hours planning and recording episodes in advance so that way we can still keep the lovely cadence of 2 episodes per week. So not exactly sure when this particular episode is getting released. I think it's still before the babies are born, lol, but I'm heavily pregnant. So if you're watching the video version of this, you can see I'm wearing one of these these bands. Oh my God, it's so extreme. And yesterday I went on this walk with one of my best friends, Lucy Jackson. If you guys listen to Happy Hour with Lucy and Nikki, with fucking Lucy, Lucky Jackson. And when we walk, we get in the zone and we start talking really fast. And the faster we talk, the faster we walk. So we went on this like 11,000, 12,000 step power walk around the city and the Harbour Bridge in Barangaroo. By the end of it, I felt fine at the time. So it's not like I wasn't listening to my body. By the end of it, I got home and I'm like, my pelvis hurts so much. The rest of the day, I felt bruised. It would hurt to like stand up and start moving. It was really bad. Had a really long sleep. And this morning I'm feeling a lot better. It's not 100%, but I'm feeling a lot better. So I feel like it's gotten to that point where now if I, you know, walk too much for a prolonged period of time or too fast, it's going to start to like weigh in on my pelvis. So good to know. Now I've just got to reel it in a little bit. But it's not detrimental. That pelvic girdle pain isn't detrimental to the actual babies. It's just painful for the mother. So love that. Anyway, that's my life update. Fun times, pelvic girdle pain, here for the ride. Now, let's get straight into the episode of today. Let's not fuck around. The first thing we're going to talk about is what is loneliness exactly, okay? Because loneliness is not just a lack of people. You will find people that just have the smallest inner circle that do not suffer from loneliness, okay? It is a lack of connection. Now, when I talk about my 3 pillars of happiness, which I feel like I've got to do a whole episode specifically on just that. But when we talk about my 3 pillars of happiness, which is growth, connection, and purpose, connection is one of the key foundations to happiness, to feeling happy, okay? And that's what loneliness is. When people lack connection, they feel isolated, they feel detached, and it starts to affect their mental health. So it's kind of like this feeling of loneliness is kind of the gap between the connection that you want and the what you're actually feeling right now, which might be like really shit connection, really surface level, like quote unquote connection, where you don't actually feel connected to anyone. You don't feel heard. You don't feel like you're there for someone else. You don't feel like someone's leaning on you and you can't lean on someone else. Is that kind of feeling, right? And it's, like I said, it's got nothing to do with numbers. It's about quality. It's about resonance. It's about this emotional intensity within the connection, okay? Now, even people in long-term relationships who are, because if you're standing there thinking, yeah, I'm fucking lonely, I've wanted a partner for years, and if I just had a partner, if I only had this, if I only had that, unfortunately, that's not even the answer. It's about the quality of the connection, because there are people in long-term relationships with active social lives who feel very misunderstood. They don't feel seen, they don't feel heard, they don't feel safe, and therefore they feel lonely. I've said this before, but one of the loneliest times I have ever felt in my life, like true loneliness, where it was seriously affecting my mental health, and that's that I've got a close-knit family, was when I was in a really unhealthy relationship. And the reason for that is because, on top of the fact that I felt emotionally isolated within my relationship, even though I saw my partner all the time, like literally every day, I felt unsafe, I felt unheard, I felt unsupported. And on top of that, even though I've got a very close-knit family and good friends, I was withholding a lot of information about how I was truly feeling, because I didn't want the people closest to me to really see what was going on behind closed doors in my unhealthy relationship. So therefore, this withholding of information, this lack of connection, of really opening up and being vulnerable to the people that are super close to me, was causing me to feel lonely. So it's not like I was the loneliest person in the world, because I still had this good support network that I could turn to if I wanted to. It's that I was taking active steps to isolate myself to try and protect my partner. And therefore, I felt way lonelier in that relationship, like beyond I can't even compare, than I did after we broke up when I was single for 3 years. Way lonelier, okay? Than when I was single and alone in my bedroom, just at peace watching a Netflix movie, right? So that's the difference between loneliness or solitude and that's the difference between loneliness and solitude, being alone but enjoying your company. Now let's talk, so that's what we're talking about, what loneliness is. Now we're talking about kind of the psychological roots and the biological roots, okay? So as we know, humans are wired for connection, obviously. We are community-based creatures. We're not animals of solitude. Some animals are, we are not, okay? So because of that, being lonely is a threat. Being isolated is a threat. We need community to survive, okay? From a primitive standpoint, but also from a very modern standpoint. We need community to survive, okay? So loneliness will trigger similar pathways within the brain that physical pain will trigger, okay? So when that is triggered chronically, that's what then causes chronic stress, chronic illness. I'm going to go into that a little bit further on what exactly happens in the brain. And then because of that, it starts to affect your psychology, your beliefs, your thoughts around other people, other groups of people. You start to kind of feel like no one cares about me. It's me against the world. Then you start to kind of reinforce these feelings, whether it's true or not. That's where your thoughts and your beliefs start to go. And then you can imagine how that can then cause an even deeper spiral of loneliness, okay? It often looks like other things as well. It doesn't immediately crop up as something that you can acknowledge within yourself, being like, I am lonely, this is the problem. Because some people can, but other people, it's like you're irritable. It's kind of like a numbness. You've got a disinterest in things because of the lack of connection. So you could be doing these things, but you don't feel very interested in them. A big one, and like I just gave you the example before, is an over-attachment to really unhealthy relationships just to avoid feeling left out, okay? So that's not just romantically, although that's a big one, but also with friendships. A lot of people that write into me and they're like, my friendships group is, and then they proceed to name like just this awful experience on a day-to-day basis of what they're exposed to with their friends. And then they're like, but I can't leave the friendship group because then I'll have no one. So this is a prime example of someone who's very lonely and masking it with the fact that they are just surrounded by other individuals, even though those individuals are really unhealthy for them and it's not doing anything for their loneliness. Sometimes we think, well, I'll be even more lonely, but you won't, because loneliness is not exclusive to not having friends. Loneliness is the lack of healthy connection. So if you are with unhealthy people, don't think that leaving the unhealthy people and having no one will make you more lonely, because it won't. You'll be probably less lonely, because at least you'll have a bit of peace of mind. There'll be less stress. You'll start to like self-regulate your emotions a little bit better, okay? But it is this over-attachment to toxic relationships. If you're sitting there thinking, wow, why do I feel like I have to have these people in my life? It's because you are lonely. You are lonely, and we need to start to turn that around. We need to start making healthier decisions for you so you can not feel that way. Another one is forcing yourself to stay really busy so you never have to sit with that feeling of loneliness, sit with that feeling of acknowledging that that's actually what's happening. And then, of course, the typical like distraction, like doom scrolling, constantly checking your phone, having crazy FOMO, even with people that you may not even be that close to, or, you know, that you may not even like that much, but feeling like you're missing out all the time with things that you might not even want to be there, but you just feel like you're missing out because you feel like you're craving that connection so much. Now, attachment wounds and loneliness. We'll go into that a little bit. Loneliness can feel quite familiar to you if you didn't have like an emotionally safe upbringing as a child. If you didn't feel completely accepted as a child, this might be quite a normal feeling. It doesn't feel good, but you're like, oh, well, this is just the norm. This is kind of just my life. Where you felt like real connection was kind of difficult to achieve or to obtain because you didn't have it as a child, and therefore that kind of translates across into adulthood. But this can be changed at any point in your life. Just because you weren't used to having true, safe, healthy connections as a kid because of the attachment style, maybe with your parents or your family or your caretakers, it doesn't mean that you're not then capable of having that later on in life. You can turn that around at any point, okay? It's also a feeling of, if you have like attachment issues, as far as like when we talk about the different attachment, like we talk about attachment styles and attachment theory, if you feel like there are problems with how you attach, you can start to feel like you're too much or not enough for a genuine close connection. So you start to put like criteria and parameters for the kind of person that you have to be deserving of connection, which is not the case. Obviously, you can't be a wanker, but in general, everyone's going to come with, you know, the good and the bad. And, you know, we always accept, in general, without a person being an asshole, we always accept kind of the whole spectrum of that person's personality, okay? Then we've got this belief that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, okay? So this is, you keep people at arm's length to avoid rejection because you're so used to being rejected, and it's quite painful and it just opens up the wounds every time. But then you end up confirming that you really are being rejected because you're not wanting to do anything that's going to bring people closer in. And then that keeps confirming this same belief. Then you feel more and more and more detached. You feel detached, so then you begin to detach, and then you reject any kind of bid for connection because you're like, this is going to open a wound. Now let's talk about what happens in the brain when you are lonely. So the first one, like I said, is the brain processes loneliness like physical pain. I brushed on that. It's this anterior cingulate cortex, this particular region in the brain, which lights up during isolation or social rejection, okay? So it actually physically hurts. It's pain signals within the brain. And it's kind of your brain telling you, pay attention, this is a warning sign, disconnection, being disconnected, being isolated is dangerous, because it is for many reasons, okay? This is why, obviously, like I said, loneliness can lead to unhealthy relationships. It can lead us to start thinking that people in general are not good for us because we're so scared of being hurt that we're like, I don't want to go down that path. I don't want to go down that path. And then you start feeling that divide of it's me against the world kind of thing, right? Narcissists bank on isolating you, okay? Because consciously or unconsciously, whether they are aware of it acutely or not, they know that when you are lonely, quote unquote, as far as emotionally isolated from your inner circle, you are way more likely to need them and therefore way more likely to stay. They can then manipulate you. They can then get you in a position where they can control you and they can have you be the person that they want you to be in order to serve their needs, okay? So when you feel lonely and disconnected, you feel threatened, in danger, and then you feel like you need the narcissist. So it's a very unhealthy kind of dynamic, but I'm sure many of us can relate if we've been in that kind of situation where we've been in a really unhealthy relationship where it's caused us to kind of push away the people closest to us in order to stay with this one person. We become really codependent, we become super attached, and then we feel like there's no way out. That's strategic, okay? People do that. People in unhealthy relationships, in particular narcissists, it is a strategy to get you to need them because narcissists want power. It's not about love, but it's about power and control, okay? Now, another thing, the amygdala, this fear center in your brain, will become more active when we are experiencing loneliness, okay? So it's more sensitive, it's more active. We are way more likely when we are lonely to interpret neutral cues, social cues, as a threat or judgmental or negative instead of just being what it is, being neutral. So if someone was to sigh, right, you're like, oh my God, they're judging what I said. They're like, that was targeted at me. That was this, whatever. When maybe they just were like, like that. Instantly you interpret it as something bad. If someone makes a comment, you're going to think, oh, that, you just start interpreting things in a much more negative light because that's where your bias is because your fear centers are going crazy, okay? You're going to assume that people don't like you, even if it's not true, even if there's no foundation behind it, because you are scanning for rejection all the time. You're looking for any clue that could lead to being like, I knew it, that person doesn't like me, they don't like me, I've got to stay away from them, okay? And again, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because you use this to fuel your reason for why social interaction is so hard and why people just don't want to bond with you and why you shouldn't just bother anyway. I'm not going to bother because I always have such a bad time. People just don't like me, or people I don't know what it is, but I'm just really unlucky. And then you keep fueling because your brain is looking for clues to be like, they're rejecting you. When in reality, and as hard as it is to see, because it's not like you're choosing to lie to yourself, this is kind of a trick that you're unintentionally playing on yourself. In reality, a lot of those things that you're using as reasons to not connect with people are just neutral, and that person never had anything negative to think about you. We've just interpreted it that way, okay? Loneliness also triggers a stress response. So when you feel isolated, your brain's going to activate your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, okay? It's going to release cortisol, which is your main stress hormone. And you know how I talk about cortisol being great when it's used for its proper purpose. But cortisol, when released chronically over time, a lot, like just constantly releasing cortisol is a problem for many reasons. Obviously, that's chronic stress, not acute stress. So that turns into chronic stress. And the problem with releasing too much cortisol over an extended period of time is that when you want the spike of cortisol, when you want to act, when you want to perform, when you need the oomph to I need to fucking, you don't get it either. So it's not like, I've got so much cortisol and now when I want to perform, I can get an even better spike of cortisol. It's actually the opposite. People with consistent levels of, with healthier levels of cortisol, it's kind of here, it's here, but when they need it, bang, they can access a spike of cortisol, right? I'm going to access, bang, spike of cortisol. I'm going to do these things that are going to G me up so I can actually perform. People with chronic stress have elevated chronic levels of cortisol, but they can't get the spikes that they need for performance. So it's actually really fucking annoying. And then, of course, when we've got chronically high levels of cortisol that doesn't drop back down, that then affects your overall health, your immunity, your digestion. It impacts your sleep. It keeps you in this alert mode. It's going to impact then other health things as well, like your digestion, probably your skin is blowing up and all of that. Then another thing is that the default mode network gets very noisy. I've got an entire episode on the default mode network. Go look it up, check it out. It's great. but it's basically this kind of the network that's active when you're not actively focusing on something. It's kind of when you're daydreaming, when you're kind of doing that self-reflection, when you're doing something kind of on autopilot and your brain's like, that is your default mode network. Some people have a really healthy one. Some people have a really awful one. And that's why they always try to distract themselves. They can't sit with their thoughts. Okay. So when you're alone and feeling rejected, this default mode network is going to go crazy, kind of turning up the volume on negative self-talk. It's kind of like, your default mode network is a big indicator. It's like an alarm system for how satisfied you are with yourself or with your life, okay? And when it's affected, you're going to start to notice, oh my God, all my thoughts are really bad. They're really negative. Obviously, this is an indicator of how I'm feeling towards my life. It's a very much like a feed-forward loop that's happening within the brain, okay? So loneliness cultivates more loneliness, and then our beliefs are going to influence our subconscious thoughts, which influence how we interact with the world based on these beliefs, and that it influences the outcome of how people interact with us. So if I'm got this narrative, my default mode network, oh my God, everyone is judging me. No one wants to spend time with me. Everyone, and then I go and interact with a stranger, I'm going to be standoffish. I'm going to be a lot colder. I'm going to be really reserved in how I behave because I'm like, I just don't want them to judge me more than they already are judging me. And then because of this person's not going to give me much. Even if they're like, oh yeah, I like this person, they're going to be like, oh, they're cold. They're not interested. They've got their walls up for whatever reason. Even if they're not judging you, they just get the vibe that you're not here for connection. So they're going to step right back and not offer a bid for connection. And then you're going to be like, see, all these people, not one person tried to talk to me, not one. So then it kind of reinforces, and it reinforces those beliefs. So our beliefs impact our behavior impacts how we interact with the outside world, and that then impacts how the outside world interacts with us, okay? Which is fucked. And then, of course, the dopamine and reward circuits are also affected. Social connection releases dopamine. When we have good social connection, we get dopamine. This is your motivation. This is your feel-good chemical. It's your willingness to do things. Loneliness means you're not getting as much of that nice reward, dopamine hit. You're getting less of that release of dopamine that's going to make you feel good. This can lead to lower mood, anhedonia. I think I've got a whole episode on anhedonia, which is this inability to feel pleasure, and then, of course, depression over time. And then because of that, we go into this kind of self-preservation where we begin to isolate ourselves more and more and more. So I want you to look at loneliness as kind of being like, it's not just I'm alone. It's an alarm system that's telling us, I am not connected, I need to be connected. So if you're feeling lonely, that is your body saying, I need connection, I'm not getting it, okay? Now let's talk about understanding the steps to rewiring this connection. The first thing is to name it honestly, okay? I want you to look at your life situation right now. Are you just someone that has no friends, has a not great relationship with your family, and you just would like to start creating some connection? You feel like you don't have your inner circle, you don't have that. That's a possibility. Are you someone that is surrounded by people, but not one of them really knows how you feel? No one ever reaches out. People think that you're really well connected because there's the quantity, but there's no quality in connection. That's a really common one. Like I said, there's people that write in about these awful friendship dynamics, and then they're like, oh, but I can't, Sometimes the loneliest people are the ones that you'd never guess are the loneliest people because they've got people around them all the time. Are you in a really unhealthy relationship where you feel fucking isolated and terrified to leave because you think, if I now left this relationship, I would have no one? But the truth is, you're not going to be more lonely than you are right now, where you feel this inability to express yourself, or you feel emotionally unsafe. You will never feel more lonely than when you're emotionally unsafe in an unhealthy relationship. That's the loneliest. That is the height of your loneliness. Trust me, being single, you're not going to feel more lonely. I can guarantee that to you, because you don't have the additional emotional manipulation or emotional abuse going on top of that, okay? But we've got to name it. You've got to say, I feel lonely because ... Because while I have a quantity of friends, there's no quality. Because I can't remember the last time that I had a D&M with someone where we really asked each other about each other's feelings, because I can't name one person in my life that I could call on my hour of need and they would drop everything and be there for me, because ... So really get clear on what loneliness is to you, okay? The next thing is, of course, distinguish between solitude and loneliness. Because you could be listening to this being like, yeah, I'm very isolated, but I don't feel any of that stuff. I'm a major introvert. I do not like socializing. Then that's not unhealthy. There is absolutely nothing wrong with being like, I don't want to be around people, but I really am calmer when I just have like my 1 or 2 friends around me. That's just more solitude versus loneliness. Loneliness, like I said, is it's a lack of depth of connection. It's not necessarily about how many people you have in your life or anything like that, okay? The next thing is, start to ask yourself, with the people that are in my life, how much of them do I connect with because they match my values, because they match my kind of personality, and how many of them is it because they match my timetable, my calendar, because they're the obvious option because we went to high school together? Like, how much of it is it out of quote unquote convenience, a friendship of convenience where it's just stayed, versus you're actually connecting with this person because they match your values? And that is really, really important. If we can't find people that we seek resonance with, we are actually wasting our time staying with this group of people that there is no connection possible. I'm not saying, oh, I've got this lovely friend, but we just don't really vibe, so I'm going to cut this friend out of my life. I'm not saying that at all. That's far from what I'm saying. But I am saying, if you are in one of those situations where you're like, I feel so disconnected to this group of people, it is just not right. But you're calling them your friends, and then because you're spending time and investing time with these people, feeling less and less and less connected, you're less likely to then go and reach out and find people, whether it be through catch-up groups or forums or in your own city or town or whatever. You're less likely to go and reach out and look for those connections because you're like, oh, I have my friendship group. So really identify, but am I connected? Do I feel a depth in this connection with these people? Now, if you feel very disconnected, doing an activity where you are around people, like even passively, is really, really helpful for connection. Like, go and do a class, go and do a workshop somewhere. Just being around people sharing your energy, even if you're not getting a crazy depth of connection, starts to lift you out of that. So let's say you're like, I really like drawing. I'm very lonely. I have no friends or no close friends. I really like drawing. Instead of doing an online drawing class, why don't I find a class where I can actually draw and I'm around people that are witnessing me and I'm witnessing them? Maybe we can share some laughs within the class. Maybe I can have a comment and then I can have a nice interaction with somebody. These little things, while they're not your best friends yet, or while they may not ever be, you start to realize, wait a minute, it's not everyone is against me. It's not that the world is against me. It's that I've had a bad run and I'm now turning that around. And I'm now seeing that when I'm in a class drawing with other people that love drawing, we're sharing a passion, we're lighthearted, it's really nice. I left that class, I said bye to everyone. I said, it was so nice to meet you. Maybe I exchanged numbers, maybe I didn't. But I left that class feeling like, oh, I actually had a really nice interaction with these total strangers. That was really nice, okay? So even if it's not like, the aim doesn't have to be, I've got to leave here with someone's number and a coffee date so I can, no. Just be around people, be witnessed and witness other people doing things, okay? Then that starts to warm you up. It starts to soften that self-fulfilling prophecy that we have that the world is against us, okay? Then another thing is pay attention to the connection with yourself as well. So this is where we start to allow ourselves to sit with our thoughts, okay? A lot of this feeling of isolation and disconnection is that we avoid our own thoughts as well. So start to sit with your thoughts and ask yourself, where did this stem from, and is that really the truth? Is it possible that I'm looking at a neutral thing as a negative thing based on my experiences so far? And if I want to change my experiences moving forward, can I look at that thing that happened and make it a positive thing? Can I take that neutral thing and instead of turning it negative, can I make it positive? Can I spend more time just also connecting with nature? connecting with my pet. You know, journaling is really good because it's a lot of self-reflection. So reflecting on how we feel and paying attention. At the beginning, you'll hate it because when you first start listening to your thoughts, especially if they're not nice thoughts, you're like, fuck this shit. This is like, I'm bullying myself. Who's going to expose themselves to that? Like, I'm not about it. That's, you know. Versus you do it the first time, it's not that pleasant. You do it the second time, it's a little bit calmer. By the 6th, 7th time, you've gotten your head around these thoughts and you're getting a deeper understanding of where these thoughts stemmed from. And then like you can do it more and more and more, okay? It's kind of like we're trying to heal this internal voice that says, no one gets me. We don't want to feel that way. The aim is not to be like, yeah, I'm going to really connect with myself and be like, it's me against the world. No one understands. It's more connecting with myself, being like, where did these patterns start? Where did I start getting influenced in this way to feel like that? And it's not to say it's all lies. Maybe something horrible happened at school. Maybe I had a terrible family connection. So I can acknowledge that. And instead of thinking the world is against me, you can be like, no, I had a bad experience here, but that's not a reflection of everything else. It's not a reflection of the rest of the world. Then you start to soften. You start being less universal and catastrophic with your language, and you start to get a bit more specific on, it was this thing that's made me feel this way and that thing. But now I'm no longer part of that. So I can start to branch out and feel a bit better. Okay. And then try to be the one who initiates certain things. And I'm not saying go down the road, find an absolute stranger and freak them out by being like, can I have your number so we can start? Like then they obviously would reject you because they're like, please get away from me. And then you're like, see, everyone rejects it. So I'm not talking about that. But if you did go to this class, you could be like, oh, what's your Instagram? It's so fucking easy to do that. Or so my cousin and I went and we did this puzzling competition. We did the puzzling competition, by the way, live fucking update. We came 50th. I was like top 10. We didn't crack the hour mark and we came 50th, lol. But there was another 150 people after us. So we did pretty well. We got an hour and 2 minutes. The puzzle was really hard, but we had so much fun. And we turned and we saw this couple that was right next to us sharing the table. And we turned to them and we said something as simple as, is this your first time doing this? And then straight away, they're like, oh my God, no, we've done this. This is our second time that we've done this. And like, you know, we kind of improved in our times. We really should have been practicing a bit more. And we're like, oh, this is our first time. And then we start chatting. Then as we're doing it, at one point, they were like, you guys are actually doing really well. You're doing, you guys are doing well, like keep it up. So then they started encouraging us. And before, like we would have easily gotten their numbers after. We just ended up leaving earlier than they left. So we didn't. But it's kind of a seamless interaction with somebody, seamless. You'll be amazed at how open people are to connection when you just throw out a bid for connection. And that's why I say do a class or do something like that because, you know, go to a puzzle swap, lol. Just become me and go to a puzzle swap and go to a puzzle com because people are just there for a fucking good time. They don't give a fuck. They're like, we've registered for this random competition. It's just hilarious. But people are chatting, right? Before you know it, as we left, we're like, guys, you're probably just 3 minutes off. Good luck. And then we left. This is people that we've never met in our life. And then we're already encouraging them. So it's once you break the ice, you'll be like, this is actually very easy to break the ice, especially when we've got a common thing that we're working on. It's very different to like walk up to someone at a cafe being like, hey, I need a friend. Do you want to be? Very different. Very different. So that's why I say involve yourself in things. So there's like, that's already the segue. And then you're just talking to somebody. Okay. If you work with someone who you get along with, and you've always gotten along with, why don't you one day say, hey, what are you doing for lunch? I'm just going to go down. Do you want to join me? And if they say no, nothing's been lost. You still go down and get your lunch. Little things like that. Sometimes you think, I've worked with this person for years. Why the fuck don't we take this friendship outside of work and actually go and hang out? Why not? Okay? So whenever possible, initiate a hello, I think you're doing really well, initiate a, hey, do you want to grab, it's little tiny things, okay? Now, one other major thing that I wanted to bring up before I wrap up the episode is one major thing that will severely impact easing your loneliness, and it's going to build your self-esteem, is by helping others. Okay, this is massive because it shifts the focus from the negative feelings of yourself And it turns it out to be like, how can I be of assistance or of service or of help to someone that needs me? The moment you feel useful, you start to feel better about yourself. When you start to feel better about yourself, you think that other people are going to see you in a better light as well. It's impossible to feel amazing about yourself, but still think that everyone views you horribly. Because your opinions of yourself are going to very heavily influence how you think what you think other people think about you. It's quite closely linked. And so if you decide, okay, I'm going to help someone, whether it could be a friend, it could be someone I already know, it could be an absolute stranger, it could be a cause, it could be something tiny, it could be something, whatever, but you start turning it around to, I've made a contribution. Someone's day has been positively affected by me. It reminds you, I actually exist in this multifaceted, connected world, and I've been useful, okay? And you go from thinking, no one cares about me, I don't matter, I feel on the outside, to being actually involved in something by helping, okay? So think, if you're like, well, I've got no one, I don't think, volunteer. Where can you volunteer? There's 1,000 places you can volunteer. And before you know it, you're like, wow, I actually felt so connected to this cause, to these people. Maybe I volunteered at there's so many fucking places you can volunteer at. I can't even begin. It could be with animals. It could be with people. It could be at something that's like a full-on charity where people are really, or it could be literally the puzzle comp that I did the other day. Everyone that worked there was a volunteer. So it doesn't have to be even the deepest thing where there's immense suffering. You could be like, I'm going to start with really lighthearted volunteering, and then I'm going to get really into like really, like emotional assistance volunteering. Whatever the fuck it is, helping someone is going to massively increase your oxytocin. When we help, our oxytocin, which is your bonding chemical, goes up. We begin to bond, okay? We feel this sense of connection when oxytocin goes up. It is one of the strongest hormones that we can feel. It's actually the strongest release of oxytocin that a human will ever experience, is when you birth a child, apparently. Well, not even apparently. The science says. So it's like that, and it's on purpose. Obviously, it's so you whether you like it or not, you bond with this baby, right? So that's like this nature of like this crazy release of oxytocin. It's also when you hug someone, when you hold someone's hand. If you're going to kiss your partner goodbye, they say you should kiss your partner you should hold that kiss for about 5 seconds, and then you start getting this nice bonding release, and you feel more connected with your partner. So when you help someone out, when you make eye contact with somebody, when you talk to someone, you're releasing oxytocin, okay? And that then makes us feel close. It makes us feel warmth. It creates this like chemical of bonding, and you feel like you are part of a bigger thing together. Okay. It then gives you a sense of value. It gives you, I am capable, I'm useful, I'm capable. I have impacted someone else's day. There's no way I'm that lonely if I can positively impact someone's day. How else can I impact someone else's day? You feel like you've got something to offer. Instead of thinking it's me against the world, you're like, I've got something to offer. People need what I have to offer. People will make use of what I have to offer. So what else could I offer? I'm in fucking high demand now, right? So it's not just about like boosting your ego, but it's about having this shift in your own identity, thinking it's, you against the world, this self-fulfilling prophecy, to being like, I have so much to offer. I really helped this person today. I can see how I could actually really positively impact many people's lives. And then because of that, I'm able to accept help as well. And then it creates purpose. Purpose is very powerful to like reverse the effects of loneliness. When you show up for something or someone else, you don't think, what's the point in my life? You start thinking, I have like value. I have a sense of purpose. I feel like I've got something to wake up for today. Okay. Then of course it's going to break the isolation loop because it's giving you connection with people, and it builds this emotional reciprocity. Okay. So you start to support others. They then start to warm up to you. You then start to build trust. you then start to feel an emotional connection. You then start to think, well, if this is possible, emotional connection is possible here, and then it's possible here, and then it's possible here. And then before you know it, you start to feel like, I feel really connected to the world. I feel like other people are just as caring to me as I have been to them. Okay? So basically that is the episode in a nutshell. I did want to like brush over some studies that were done about loneliness, just to wrap it up in case you guys wanted to do further research. But there was a particular study that came out which was called Does Rejection Hurt?, where they did like an fMRI kind of study of social exclusion. And they found that this is the one that shows all these particular brain regions that activated like physical pain when people were put under like social rejection scenarios, okay? And so that's how we're seeing that if emotional pain and physical pain is triggering the same areas in the brain. That's why if you're feeling that way, go and do some exercise, because endorphins are going to like soothe that pain a little bit. Another study that's called Social Regulation of Gene Expression in Human Leukocytes. And it found that people that experience chronic loneliness showed increased expression of pro-inflammatory genes and a decreased antiviral gene expression. So this is why it's going to affect your immune system and your health when you're feeling really lonely. This is why I think a lot of older people get really sick when their partner passes away, because they instantly have way less of a connection and they start to feel very, very lonely. So it's quite dangerous. Loneliness can also be contagious. So there's a study called Alone in the Crowd, the Structure and Spread of Loneliness in a Large Social Network. And it found that loneliness spreads through social networks, okay? So being around lonely people and not actually connecting to them is going to make you also feel lonely. So this is like, it's that shift between, it's not just being around people, it's being around connection, feeling like you're super connected to that individual. So good times. There's a whole bunch of other studies, but maybe I'll link those studies in my social feed instead. Guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Hopefully it made you feel that if you are lonely, there's many things that you can be doing right now. If you are lonely, you don't have to stay in the unhealthy relationships to feel less lonely. If anything, you should be breaking out of those cycles to now completely change the narrative of like how connected you are with other people. I just hope it's giving you some insight and some food for thought for yourself. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode, guys. I love you so much. As always, remember, be kind to yourself, be kind to your brain. Don't take shit from anyone, and especially don't take shit from yourself. Danke!